Good afternoon, I'm Scott Reitz, and previously I discussed my issue revolver, Smith & Wesson 4-inch stainless steel model 67, and some of the speed loaders that I was issued and some of the evolutions that occurred as we went through history to the point where we had semi-autos. But I thought I'd also bring up the fact that at the time, everybody was looking for an advantage. Most of the bad guys had semi-autos. They outgunned us on a not too infrequent basis. They had Browning high powers or 1911s. They had high-capacity magazines, and we still had revolvers. The initial pistol that I showed earlier in another segment was a 4-inch, and Smith & Wesson, model 67 stainless 4-inch, and it had a bull barrel, one of the few, if not the only one, that was ever registered to me that I was allowed to carry in the field. But individuals and officers in the know wanted every advantage, so we went out and we purchased 6-inch revolvers whenever we could. We were allowed to carry these. 6-inch revolver, obviously 2 inches longer, but it still had the adjustable sights, but that longer sight radius meant basically you had less potential error in alignment of the sights. There was also a little bit more mass, so it kind of countered it during recoil phase. This had Hurst Stocks. Most of the guys that I knew that were in the know had Hurst Stocks made by John Hurst. There were other ones called Fuzzy Ferrant, and you'll see those in Adam 12 series. And they're nice, but they're kind of boxy for my liking. I like this because it would fit the hand perfectly. You got up in the back strap, he'd take an actual imprint of your hand and he'd build the stocks to you. They made very few of these. It has Los Angeles Police Department roll stamps into the barrel. They only sold them for, I think, a period of about maybe 2 years, and then they discontinued them. So this is the model 68-2, I believe. Along with this revolver that I carried in the street, there were different types of holsters. There was a top break. There was also the Widowmaker, and the Widowmaker is one that you'll see on Adam 12, and on Adam 12, you'll see one where there's a full flap that went over the entire pistol, so you couldn't even see it. I hated those things. I had a training officer who was a knucklehead, who made me wear one when I was with him. And all it was a flap that actually went over the pistol itself. You couldn't even see the pistol. And it had a little tiny stainless steel button that punched through a cut in the leather. And literally, if you got in an altercation, foot pursuits, that thing would come open, the pistol go flying out. There was no retention device. And one night we were on a call, and I remember getting out of the vehicle, out of the black and white as a passenger officer. This is at night. And it had a swivel on it, so it swiveled, and I got out, conducted the call, and realized my pistol was still in the car. So the swivel had come undone, cotter pin or whatever came out, and the pistol and the holster were still inside the black and white because I had to get out of the vehicle very quickly. So after that, I never carried one again, and I just basically disregarded that training officer. So every now and then you get people that are somewhat moronic, working at room temperature IQ that you have to work with. That was one of them. However, I did have a clamshell holster. And the clamshell holster, it's called the clamshell because it works as a clam, has a round retention device right here, steel bar. It has a hook right here, and this is activated by a spring mechanism. So when you press down on the spring, this retracts to the rear, thereby releasing this. So the revolver would sit inside. This portion here retained it and kept it aligned. It was behind the trigger. You'd close this flap here, just like this. And this is what it looked like when you carried it on duty. It was swiveled. And the one reason a lot of officers like this is because you could have this in your lap and then throw it over, and it was seated right on your lap when you were inside the vehicle. So if you had to, you pressed, and it was open just like that. Now, there is a problem with this if you look very carefully. This is a major violation of one of the safety rules that we adhere to in this day and age. If you watch very carefully, the clamshell is not activated by any other means other than this button, which is coincidentally located to the very front of the trigger surface. So guess what would happen a lot of times? Out would come, finger on, and bam. Now, if you don't think that officers didn't have negligent discharges back in that day due to the fact that each revolver on LAPD was always neutered, meaning it was double action only. It cannot be thumb cocked. It had to be fired in this manner right here. So what officers would do, They came out, alighted from the vehicle, too much finger on, and off went the round. So, clamshell holster, not very many of these around. A 6-inch clamshell, probably even fewer. Somehow I managed to retain this one for all these years, and you can see the wear on the back of it, and that's the pin right here, a cotter pin, where it just swerves back in here, but you can see where it would sit on my gear and it would rub up against anything I had in the front of the Sam Browne, how it just got worn. But this thing still operates after all these years, and that is a clamshell holster. Now, the reason I stopped working with the clamshell holster is the following. I was working with one of these, wearing one. We were going after a bank robber. I work with a partner on the hype car, the heroin expert, so there was only one hype car, two of us for the entire San Fernando Valley, Ray Lyons and myself, and we were looking for a bank robber. Went out early in the morning in a cold car, but in uniform, so I'm wearing the 6-inch clamshell with a 6-inch revolver. Not that one, but a different one. And lo and behold, first day we're out there, early morning, very early morning, sun's just coming up. We have binoculars. Ray was very good. He knew where all the hypes, heroin addicts lived, who they frequented with, and we look, and who do we see going down the sidewalk, but none other than the suspect himself. He was wanted. I think the FBI wanted him as well. So I end up in a foot pursuit with this guy. I was young, fast, quick. Ray is driving around trying to find me. Back then, when you left your vehicle, you didn't have communication other than a big brick Motorola radio, which never worked. There were dead spots all over, probably more dead spots than hot spots. Anyway, we're running down, and I'm chasing after this guy full bore, and he makes a turn, negotiates a right turn, goes into an apartment complex in the valley. And the apartment complex that he went into was 2 stories, and in the center was a pool, swimming pool. And there were a series of steps going down. Well, this suspect goes running straight down the steps. I'm young. I decide if I'm going to catch this guy, I've got to be quicker, so I bypass all the steps. And when I bypass all the steps, I land with everything I've got on 2 feet. Didn't lose my balance, but I hit very hard. Now, the problem is once that revolver is inside the holster, any sudden jarring motion could set this off, and that's exactly what happened. I landed on both feet hard. This popped open, 6-inch went sliding out into the swimming pool. Suspect runs down about 4 doors, goes into a door. I'm hopping around. Pistol's down at the bottom of the swimming pool. I had a 2-inch in an ankle holster, so I'm hopping around, take that out, run in, kick the door open, and there are about 5 or 6 heroin addicts in there just looking at me, and generally heroin addicts are very mellow. But I'm sitting there with this holster open, 2-inch revolver in my hand, no 6-inch, that's in the swimming pool back outside, and telling everybody to freeze. So that's the last time I ever wore this holster. After that, it was a top draw only. And that is Uncle Scotty's experience with a 6-inch clamshell holster, LAPD, circa about 1978-79. Thank you.